Hello, that's me again, and it is actually May 31st. It is evening here in the Pacific Northwest, but the events are developing with such enormous speed, and they pile up, so to speak, with such speed that I really needed to make these comments, and because they will be more fundamental, obviously with some, so to speak, sitrapish flavor to them, I decided to make this video today. I will release it tomorrow on June 1st. And one way or another, this was supposed to be said, had to be said about the whole situation. And we will start, of course, with, what can I say, news. And, you know, I understand you need to basically comment on news. But let's start with the news which are really important, and here it is. As we already know, Vladimir Putin confirmed yesterday that a few days ago Russians targeted what he calls, we have been talking about the possibility of striking the decision-making centers. Naturally, Ukraine's military intelligence headquarters falls into such category, and it was hit 2 or 3 days ago. Simple as that. With what Russians hit it, I don't know. There are actually, until everything is confirmed, there are some photos of this building of the GUR, which is Главное управление, which is Chief Directorate of the intelligence. And some see it kind of charred because something obviously flew and there are some holes in it. We don't know. There are also some basically satellite photos which show that the building actually and grounds around it suffered quite significantly. So we'll see. Obviously, we have to understand they do not sit in the building per se. They sit actually in the bunkers, and that's the whole other story. And evidently, the bunkers have been basically reached. We don't know how many of them died, but there is another thing. Ask yourself a question. Read my lips. How many British and American intelligence officers have been in those bunkers? And as the result, we have this thing which everybody discusses, and now it is almost like knee-jerk fodder about the attack of Moscow by those drones. And I don't have to go about it for too long. You all read the news. All drones have been shut down or intercepted. They actually, some of them which lost their direction and guidance, they smacked into their basically fragments smacked into their some residential buildings, and it was attack on residential buildings. And Mr. Antonov today, the Russian ambassador to the United States, is absolutely straightforward, no mincing words, and he stated this. First, U.S. is behind that. Nobody believes any of this crap which all those American officials are actually spewing around. And Antonov stated that U.S. encouraged Ukraine to attack Russia. And as always, it's naturally that it all comes down to attacking civilian targets, which is absolutely normal for the United States. And Antonov remarks came after a White House spokesperson told reporters that as a general matter, we do not support attacks inside of Russia. Yes, you do. Everybody knows this outside Washington, and that's his response. This is a very remarkable response. Listen to this phrase. The Russian Federation has been sentenced to capital punishment, quote unquote, in the West long ago, but simply they don't have it in them to achieve this goal, the ambassador stated. This is what is called calling the bluff and calling your partners cowards, which they are. Both Washington, London, and the European capitals are cowards. They don't have means to kind of meet it on the real battlefield. Why it is so? Let me put it this way. We are witnessing, and I am on the record for many times now, we are witnessing a complete implosion of American military mythology. The only thing in the last 50 years which United States had could grab onto was this, televised victory, quote unquote, against absolutely backward and absolutely undertrained, under-equipped army of Saddam Hussein. Not to mention the fact that for half a year, United States and Allied forces have been allowed to preposition forces. This is funny. And I want to put you through kind of time machine and get you to none other than the chief of the strategy department of Russian Academy of Military Sciences, of General Staff, actually, pardon my French. It wasn't the military sciences, it was no less than Department of Strategy of the Academy of General Staff of Russia. It was 1992. And here's what Mr. Klokotov stated already then, which everybody who had any serious military background knew. I would like to emphasize here that the Persian Gulf War was taken as the standard in studying the strategic nature of possible war. It would appear that this position adopted in the draft fundamentals of Russian military doctrine is dangerous. The fact is that this war was strange in all respects and cannot serve as a standard. It is Chief of Strategy Department of Russia's Academy of General Staff, Lieutenant General Klokotov, 1992. Well, 31 years passed since then, and obviously the West, combined West, is not ready to fight the only war which could be fought, and this is combined arms warfare of peer against peer, so to speak, using condescending BS term provided by Pentagon, and on the real modern battlefield, the modern NATO forces, headed by the United States, have absolutely no chance of not sustaining catastrophic losses. And we're already talking about, as I already stated, this is not only me, anybody who is anybody in terms of real professionalism in the US military, and there are still some people left who understand that. We are talking about, again, Colonel Wilkerson stated that we would be looking at, in the first real serious situation with the combined arms warfare, if to imagine that United States and NATO are allowed to concentrate and preposition forces. Let's imagine this fantastic scenario, is the fact that in the first week probably US Army would lose 40,000 KIAs. So, well, if the United States as a country are ready to do that, no, we know it's not. There will be a revolution here immediately, and all those BS peddlers of the American media will be absolutely thrown out of their positions, because people will see basically the stream of the coffins like this. And again, it is a tragedy that young people, very many of them, this is the Ukrainians sending yet another American body to the United States. It is a tragedy that many young American soldiers really believe in this propaganda, and then they basically volunteer to fight in Ukraine. Some of them do not volunteer. I'm pretty sure some of them, and we basically can assume that, are sent there on the cover with the legend over them, so to speak, but they are cadre U.S. Officers and soldiers. So, and this is what is this all about, and that's why Mr. Antonov absolutely openly states that you don't have what it takes. Absolutely, neither courage nor means, resources, ability. And again, I am on record. You can quote me. You can quote me. In fact, this refer to me when anybody will ask you who told you this. Tell them this is Mr. Martyanov who told you that actually United States was the arms race, and I mean lost it on lost in all of the domains. And the point here is that when you look at this, you suddenly come down to this situation, because obviously we should not forget that there is such country which is not United States but Great Britain. But we will talk about this shortly. But look what we have now here, and this is another thing which is absolutely fascinating. First, we have Mr. Borrell. The guy actually, you have to remember, this guy actually has a very strong STEM background. He has degree in aeronautical engineering. He has actually applied mathematics, degree, among many other things. He could have been probably a very talented engineer, but of course, being sucked into the European Commission and in the EU bureaucracy, he completely lost all intellectual faculties. And here it is. This is what he says. I see a concentration of troops on both sides, the clear will of Russia to try to win the war, the diplomat said. There is no concentration on the Ukrainian side because that's the whole other story. And Mr. Borrell, being still engineer, but very, very civilian one, and especially dumped down through their work in the European Union, modern ISR complex, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, doesn't allow you concentrate those things without being noticed, and noticed well in advance. So, and as such, you actually cannot concentrate them on the Ukrainian side because they will be immediately annihilated. So, and this is their basically operational and strategic reality on the ground, and I want to repeat it. Read my lips. I'm quoting Myrat Khairunin, probably one of the best military correspondent Russia got in the last 30 years, at least. And when he speaks, I listen because I know whom he knows and what he does. And read my lips. Even battalion level commanders on the Russian forces, they see on the up to 30 kilometers in depth of the Ukrainian side. Make your own conclusion. So, and then take a look at the schemes which I presented to you, what you need to do to conduct any kind of offensive operation or counter-offensive if you wish, or what have you. You need to actually build the columns. You need to make their proper attacking order. If not, you're done. But how can you make it when even battalion level commander sees 30 kilometers in depth? Then you go higher, we go from battalion to maybe a regiment, and then brigade, and guess what? They see things even further. But what can I say? Evidently, military science have not been written for the modern Western world, because evidently most, not all people who come out from the Western world as military experts, quote unquote, are absolute amateurs. They do not know what they're talking about. And again, you can quote me on that too. And that brings us also to another thing. While they still continue to, fight Russia, and, pretend that they kind of know what to do with Russians, we have today's news from the no less than Bloomberg, and we'll talk about this also shortly. OPEC excludes Bloomberg, Reuters, and Wall Street Journal reporters from meeting. Well, yeah, OPEC actually didn't send invitations, and here Bloomberg is lying. No reason for lack of invites was given by the OPEC Secretariat. No, it was given because basically all those people, which are Bloomberg, Reuters, and Wall Street Journal, report lies, as do most of the mainstream media in the United Kingdom, Germany, and United States. So basically, the average, basic representation of the modern Western journalist is a prostitute. And I'm talking a whore in both meanings, both whore in the figurative sense and whores in the physical sense, because they sleep around, they promote themselves, and people who go into the Western media today, and believe me, much Russian media too, they are people who are ready to sell whatever it takes, including their honor, if they ever had one, consciousness, and in some cases they will do some things we don't want to discuss about. So, and in this case, yeah, what do? As Mr. Lavrov a couple of years ago stated to CNN during the press, when they asked him some question, he said, you know what, just write whatever you want and attribute it to me, you're gonna lie anyway. And you can look it up. And when you look at this and you suddenly get this news, because obviously you have to understand, this news created excruciating pain for very many people. We have this Rosneft reports today, and this is about the fact that Russian state-run oil giant Rosneft saw its first quarter 2023 net profit rise by over 45% to around 4 billion. And here's the question, which is of purely strategic value, which is why the issue also of the, for example, gas hub in Turkey. Obviously, oil is one thing, but what about gas? Well, the reason is very simple, and again, I'm quoting a real professional in the energy. I am not. I don't quote me on anything energy related in terms of how markets operate, but I'm quoting Mr. You don't know him, but he is a very prominent Russian analyst and specialist in this case, and it's the fact that it's to depoliticize Russian gas sales, and you have to consider, as I already stated, that it's basically moving the trade, so to speak, square or trade spot from one place, which of course now blown out Nord Stream 2, to Turkey in through the Turk Stream, and whatever the additional pipeline will be built, it to allow those corporations and those responsible people who are still left in the Western Europe not to descend into complete mayhem, which Europe will descend eventually. And in this case, Russia gets paid, and Russians don't mind. The Russians will negotiate with the devil, if need be, as long as he pays. And the same happens to Europe, and actually as I already many times on record, Russia is not interested in having a mayhem and chaos on its borders. And so they're kind of throwing a little bit of the lifeline there. It makes total sense not to go them, there will be very serious trials, actually, believe me. And tribulations they're already starting, and we already see the numbers on the decline, industrial decline in Europe across the board, France, Germany, Italy, what have you. They will continue to do that, and again, as I already stated, Morgenthau plan will be implemented on a larger scale. But here we come now to other guys, to people who really do not understand what they are. They already lost kind of complete touch with the reality and sense of scales and proportions. We will start Mr. Duda of Poland, the president of Poland, no less. Today, March 31, President talks to his portal. This is what you see here is a screenshot of the portal of Polish president, official portal. And this is what he says. You don't need to know really, I kind of can get like about 60% of what is written here, but point is, Duda suddenly, when speaking in one of his presentation and at the NATO meeting, and he started talking about that, everybody thinks that Putin lost the war because Finland joined the NATO and things of this nature, and he says, it's not true. Vladimir Putin never lost a war in his life. And as you can see yourself, this is what he states. And when you begin to think about it, why Mr. Duda will say that? Well, because obviously we know what is happening on the front lines and in Ukraine, deep in Ukraine, and why those, desperate attempts of attacking civilian targets in Russia. You know why. We can see it. And then suddenly we have this. And that is kind of the focal point of my communications to you today, guys, because it needs to be discussed. If you go back to 1942, you see this? This is famous 1942 poster of Mr. Churchill and Great Britain. And this poster, while being propaganda, actually has a lot of real value behind it, because at some point of time, for almost a year, United Kingdom, Great Britain stood alone. Yes, they were fighting for their freaking empire, but at least it was Churchill who overruled basically the conservative consensus among many conservatives in Britain who wanted to ally with Hitler and Nazi Germany. But you know what? Great Britain stood alone. Obviously, we all love, the Iron Maidens, Aces High, and all those glorious times of the, British heroism and steadfastness, and, so it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true in this respect, and I would say this is an excellent propaganda poster which reflected to a certain degree, to a large degree, the reality of, well, let's say 1940, 1941, until the Nazis committed the gravest mistake for themselves, and they invaded the Soviet Union. But today, when we talk about United Kingdom, we have this situation, and believe me, one here is a Mastiff, and the other, as you can see yourself, is Chihuahua. And the problem with the modern United Kingdom is the fact that they think that there's still this, large, very threatening, horrible dog, which is Mastiff. It's a tremendously powerful breed, and it can eat you alive. No, the problem, of course, the fact that, United Kingdom is this yellow thingy, under the feet of this mastiff, but they still cannot get rid of those phantom pains that they are not great power. Forget about superpower. I'm talking about they're not even great power long time ago. Economically, it's a pipsqueak, and if you isolate a little bit of the remaining high tech in Great Britain, United Kingdom, such as some weapon systems, such as Rolls-Royce, which of course the world-renowned producer of the jet engines, you begin to see and look at this and say, oh yeah, it is Chihuahua, and so like they have army which is, it's not even serious. They have about 160 combat-ready airplanes. Actually, I'm lying. Many of those airplanes, around 30, are actually F-35Bs, and they have issues with now cooling system, as the General Accounting Office yesterday kind of told us that, yeah, they ask now for $38 additional billion to fix that issue of this lame duck airplane. And so when you look at this, you have about like 130 with the many of them of the first flight being retired of the Typhoon Eurofighter, which is a good plane. But it's also becoming obsolete on the modern battlefield. And when you look at this like, yeah, this is a powerful country, right? Not. And of course, then you begin to look at the fact that they still consider themselves to be serious player. Let me tell you, they are not. And Mr. Medvedev actually, as already stated, he already told them. Today, or actually yesterday, he, reacting to the UK Foreign Secretary, cleverly has stated that Ukraine has the legitimate right to project force beyond its border, is to undermine Russia's ability to project force into Ukraine itself. Look what Mr. Medvedev, and again, do not forget who Mr. Medvedev is. He is a former president, and he is deputy of Vladimir Putin, who is chairman of the Russia Security Council. And here it is. That being the case, any of its public officials, either military, civil, who facilitate the war from the UK can be considered as a legitimate military target. You can see yourself the change of the tone and you can sense it. Essentially, he told them, well, yeah, we'll kill you if you continue to do that. And this is the first time. And at this particular case, United Kingdom needs some schooling and kind of getting to its proper place in the history and in the present geopolitical order, because they are militarily, economically, compared to Russia, they are pipsqueak. They are insignificant. And the point is that not only that United Kingdom, God forbids, I mean, I love English culture, I love English language, I adore so many things about Great Britain, but it's not there anymore. It's a psychopathic little kingdom which thinks that it's great, power, which it is not even close. And here's Mr. Medvedev saying this, and then of course we have these ridiculously funny things which are like that. We have suddenly RUSI, which is of course the Royal United Service Institute, allegedly the think tank, of those, serious military people from Great Britain, and they were actually 2 days ago, Mr. Byrd, who is now the chief of the Defense Intelligence, delivered speech to these Russian guys, and the topic was reappraising of UK Defense Intelligence priorities, and that was this classic blah 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 of people who have no clue what they're dealing with. Maybe some do, and many people of them from those, elite, so to speak, educational facilities in the United Kingdom, be them Oxford or what have you, and many of them being produced and being absolutely uncultured and uneducated people. And again, you have to understand, even if you learn, for example, have degrees such as Russian language and Russian literature, it doesn't make you professional in Russia at all. It's one of the stepping stones and a very huge, long ladder of achieving proficiency and understanding Russia, or for that matter, any serious country. And here's what Mr. Byrd says. The continued development of advanced weapon system will challenge us. And unlike previous decades, we cannot expect advanced militaries to maintain a monopoly on the use of those advanced systems. The question is, why is he talking about it? United Kingdom doesn't have advanced weapon systems which are properly suited for the modern combined arms warfare or multi-domain battlefield. They simply don't. They barely could field the second aircraft carrier, which by the time the Prince of Wales was out of the dock, it was already obsolete anyway. Because, I mean, it takes a couple Kinjals and that's it, you know. And when you look at this, I mean, what kind of system they're talking about? And the times when the United Kingdom can produce its own, you know, Lightning jet combat aircraft or those Vulcan or whatever strategic bombers, they're all gone. United Kingdom cannot produce any of it. It can produce some engines and some elements or components of it, but it's all America. And here the guys continue to basically dream, which is, it makes it extremely funny. I almost feel pity for those people. With these factors on the horizon, the UK should assume we will have an overriding technological, should not assume we'll have overriding technological advantage in future conflicts, but there are other aspects of advantage, for example, the nation's ability to deliver finding power through its conduct and sustainment of joint operations. Russia has collided with this reality during its invasion of Ukraine. I don't know what's wrong with those people, what kind of drugs they were taking while studying in Oxford and whatever the hell they were studying in, but evidently those people are delusional. And when you have this guy, and I assume there was an open part, he was, you know, spreading this BS to Rusi, and I don't know, all those colonels and brigadier generals or what have you sitting there, did they sit there with the straight faces listening to this garbage? United Kingdom militarily is a pipsqueak. It's gonna last about 20 minutes on the battlefield, and I'm talking about conventional, and even conventionally Russia can turn London into the parking lot and United Kingdom will not do anything. They have the Trafalgar class strategic missile submarines having patrolling the seas with on the strategic deterrence patrols with the 2 or 4 Trident D5 missiles, which of course still American missiles. And when you look at this, you begin to say, what are they thinking about? I mean, who those people are? And then you begin to understand why, for example, soon, if you are showing your ID card that I am from Reuters or Associated Press, people will be spitting into your face because this is what they are. They are whores. They pretend that they mean nothing. They are meaningless. Absolutely. And that is not an insult. And let's go back to fundamental issue with the root, the cause of this. And this is one of my favorite books, and you know this, by great British historian in the times when the real history and real historical research was allowed in other ways, totalitarian Europe. Here it is, Corelli Barnett, From the Collapse of the British Power. And he is talking about this thing in this one of the greatest history books written on the empire's decline and how actually most of what we observe about the Western world today is smoke and mirrors. And actually it equally applies to the United States, but with a little bit different caveats, so to speak. Look what he writes. Lend-Lease gradually consummated the process Churchill had begun of transforming England into an American satellite warrior state, dependent for its existence on the flow of supplies across the Atlantic. Indeed, the very terms under which Lend-Lease was operated both encouraged England to become the more dependent on America and emphasized the fact of her dependence. England had to agree not to sell any articles abroad which contained Lend-Lease material, nor any goods even if British made, similar to goods received under Lend-Lease. An organization of American officials in England policed observance of these requirements. Do you recognize these guys? Yes. Sanctions of the United States against Russia, which do not allow any American-made product to be sold or exported from Russia. Good God, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And here it is. Not only did the British export trade in the product of advanced technology collapse as the result of the Lend-Lease, but when the war was drawing to an end, it was to prove difficult or impossible for Britain to revive such exports because of Lend-Lease regulations and American supervision vision of them. It was an illuminating aspect of their special relationship, quote unquote, that this American control was only extended to the English and not to the less compliant Russians who took all they could by way of aid without surrendering a jot of their independence. And actually, that is why, as he correctly states, the victory in 1945 itself was, so far as the British were concerned, partly illusion too. And today we observe actually the results of it. Remember, we see 10 excellent, Vickers aircraft, those, British commercial airspace aircraft, wonderful aircraft actually, without the Comet, but, Comet had its own issues there, and they were resolved eventually. So, now, United Kingdom cannot produce anything anymore out of its own resources. It could be the part of some things, but no, that's it. United Kingdom doesn't have any sovereignty, and especially economic one, because it sits very heavily on the needle of American technology, much of which, especially in military sense, is basically fraud and, how to say it, it's all an illusion of the capability. And that is what is happening now. And these guys, I understand them. I understand. Can you imagine being a British guy in, let's say, 60s and, just watch wonderful British cinematography, wonderful British aircraft flying there, British ships, combat ships, hanging around England and, participating in the Cold War. And then suddenly, here it comes 2023, and you cannot even freaking basically deploy one single combat-ready brigade. And those Challenger tanks and those absolutely obsolete weapon systems, such as Storm Shadow, which is essentially, French missile, if we come down to basically a root of this missile. So, and when you look at this, you begin to understand that, my gosh, I feel pity for these guys. I really do. It has to be excruciating, Or as Pink Floyd saying, quiet desperation is the English way. And this is what happens. And what's left? The only thing which is left is to bark like Chihuahua and think that you matter. And in the larger, basically, scheme of things, United Kingdom doesn't matter at all. And just to demonstrate to you, those London, insurance companies, they canceled insurance for the Russian-operated oil tankers. Well, guess what Russians did? They just created their own insurance agencies. And when you are awash with cash and you have economic potential of Russia, let alone military potential, this is how you view those guys. And that is why Mr. Medvedev told them, you continue like this, see what happens. And what can you do? Just look at this thing again and decide for yourself where's United Kingdom. And this is what I wanted to tell you today, and I will be busy for a couple of days because I need to do some house chores, which require, not immediate, but require attention. I need to deal with some issues. So, but this is what I wanted to tell you guys, and as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel and, support if you can afford on Patreon or buy me a coffee or two. And guys, have the nice, whatever, coming weekend. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.